good evening, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Alex Kirsch Project. The podcast is Current Events on Tap. A podcast brought to you by yours truly, Alex Kirsch, pragmatic, progressive, U.S. Army veteran, truck driver, gamer, and streamer. If this is your first time on the show, please do not forget to hit like, share, and comment. We are currently streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, and the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. The format for the show is simple. I bring on one or more guests on the show, we talk beer or our beverage of choice, and then we also decide to go into what current events of the week. Each person will discuss their beverage of choice, and for this whole hour, we will then discuss whether it's alcoholic, non-alcoholic, and then each person will then cover the two current events of their choosing. They first give the current event, they give their assessment, then the person that they bring on or the other person will then give their assessment essentially. Then the other person goes, and then back and forth kind of deal. Then afterwards, the guest has every opportunity to ask me whatever question, and we can go into any discussion. Nothing is off limits. We just got to make sure that we keep it within TOS because I'm just getting back into the swing of things, and I want to make sure I do not lose my channel, what have you. The point of this space is for all of us to discuss the issues and what we think of it and to keep an open mind to what the other person has to say. There may be debates, there may be discussions, what have you. This is all about being in good faith. And without further ado, let's welcome our guest. Flausny, introduce yourself.
How you guys doing? I am Flausny. I describe myself as a liberal imperialist, cuffed up to the American Empire and a beautiful woman, and happy to have some drinks and have a great conversation with you.
Fantastic. How about you go ahead and just tell us about your drink of choice this evening?
Tonight I have a great, truly, strawberry lemonade hard seltzer.
Okay.
They're nice, low on calories, and delicious, and they go down smooth. You know, it's when you're having a nice dialogue like this, it's good to have something that's good just on the tongue, not something that every time you drink it, you know, like some Jameson or something, which I don't mind throwing back every now and then. But this is nice. What about you?
Tonight I have from the Upper Hand Brewery up in the Upper Peninsula for the Yoopers. It's the Upper Hand IPA. It's not bad. It's kind of got a little bit of a bite to it. It says Tropical Piney India Pale Ale. Now, I'm not usually much of a pale ale kind of guy, but I will make exceptions. Now, you see, Upper Hand makes some really, really good beers. Like, there's one that's like Big Fish or something like that. Really, really good beer. There's also like a Deer Stand one, which is like got the orange and black camo on it. This one is not bad. Like, I can actually see myself drinking more than one of these, but I'm just kind of milking this one because, you know, I like to drink beer, but I'm just going to kind of kick back and just, you know, sip on this one for a little bit. It's not one that I'm just gonna like throw down and just like drink one after the other. There are some out there like that, but this isn't one of them. But honestly, I would have to say this is not bad though for an IPA. Usually some IPAs are too hoppy, they got too much bite to them, you know, and it just kind of makes them not very good, honestly. But this one, I would drink it again. I would keep buying it essentially. So, but yeah, hey, cheers to you, my friend. Always.
Cheers. Yeah, my girl loves the Blue Moon with an orange slice. That's her go-to. If she can't have that for beer, she's just she's actually from Michigan too. We were actually up there a while back. I was actually I had to go up there for a family thing. We literally stayed on 8 Mile. It was pretty great.
Oh yeah, that's really dicey area. I used to go pick up and do deliveries in that area, so that's a really dicey area. But
yep. I'm pretty sure the hotel they were running almost like a brothel. There were a lot of suggestively dressed women going to different rooms throughout the night, and it was hilarious.
Oh yeah, I bet. But yeah, like the one of my favorite things was the when it comes to beers and stuff like that. So Upper Hand, I think they're also a part of a branch off of Bell's. If you get a chance, Bell's Oberon Eclipse is really, really good. Because, like, Oberon's already good by itself. It's that Belgian wheat. But the Oberon Eclipse is dark, but it's not like one of those dark beers. It's just like a darker color. Really good, especially on tap. It's delicious. Like, I'm going to review one of those probably next week because I haven't reviewed that one yet. So, but
yeah, and I got to say, with dark beers, too, if I'm having steak and I have a Guinness, like, there are... Like I always have a cup of water, like to like refresh my palate and stuff.
Sure.
But, like just having a Guinness there, like after like a bite of nice steak, like there are a few things as good as that in life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jeez, I keep screwing that up. But yeah. So anyway, you ready to jump into current events?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So first, I gotta find my current event. Oh geez, I keep doing that. It's killing me. All right. So first current event. A jury in New York City has recently awarded E. Jean Carroll $83.3 million, and was already added to lawsuit against Donald Trump, who was already found liable for sexually assaulting her. In May of 2023, he was ordered by the court to pay her $5 million in damages. So that brings the total up to $88.3 million in damages, essentially. But however, since May of 2023, he has still not paid her a cent. And he has consistently gone on social media, harassing her, slamming her, and defaming her character. Now, Carroll has then went on to sue for damages here, and the jury actually deliberated for about 3 hours. Trump walked out. He walked out during closing arguments, which I think is hilarious, because the guy just can't handle, the fact that he's a piece of shit, in my opinion. But the total damages that the jury came up with is he has to pay $11 million for damaging her reputation, $7.3 million for her emotional harm that he's caused her, and $65 million in punitive damages, because guess what? Lawsuits are very expensive. Now remember, a judge didn't determine this. A jury of peers determined this. Now, Trump swears up and down that he is going to fight these damages and he's going to refuse to pay this. He already went on Truth Social after he stormed out, and he typed in, or somebody else typed this in for him, "Absolutely ridiculous. I fully disagree with both verdicts and will be appealing, and will be this whole Biden-directed witch hunt focused on me and the Republican Party. Our legal system is out of control and being used as a political weapon. They have taken away all First Amendment rights. This is not America." That's my worst impersonation, but you know what? Let's just gotta roll with it. So first things first, I knew he was gonna melt down anyway, because I knew he was going to be found guilty. He's already been found liable. Now, let's just correct the record that people are going to say that he was found liable for rape. He was not. The jury determined that he was not liable for rape, but he was found liable for sexual assault, which it's kind of like, semantics game, but sexual assault is sexual assault. There's no such thing as a good sexual assault, essentially, right? Because it basically means without somebody's consent, regardless of how you look at it, right? But the thing is, when it comes down to it, is this is like the beginning of Trump's problems, because he's also facing 91 criminal charges in 4 different jurisdictions across the country, including the one in Georgia for the Georgia 2020 election case, with the charges of racketeering, conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer, conspiracy to commit filing false documents, solicitation of violent oath by a public officer, the 2020 federal election case, conspiracy to defraud the USA, obstruction of an official proceeding, the hush money case with him and Stormy Daniels, porn star, which he faces 34 counts in the hush money scheme to silence allegations of his extramarital affairs with Stormy Daniels while his wife was pregnant at the time. And finally, the federal classified documents case, which includes 41 federal charges, which includes mishandling of classified documents, obstruction of justice, and making false statements. So basically, it's a shitstorm for Donald Trump. He's insisting that he's innocent. He's insisting and he's demanding that he gets immunity for all these things. He says that he doesn't remember E. Jean Carroll. He says he's never met her before, even though he saw a picture in a deposition of him with his ex-wife, Ivana, and then E. Jean Carroll right in front of him, and he thought that was Marla Maples. He mistook Marla Maples for E. Jean Carroll, essentially, and he said that E. Jean Carroll is not his type. Now, in my personal assessment, people that are not guilty of sexual assault or rape don't say she's not my type, okay? I could argue about this for hours. But the thing is, though, when people say, oh, well, now people are on social media saying, well, guess what? Tara Reade needs to come back to the United States and file charges against Joe Biden. Well, the problem is, though, is that she defected to Russia, so that's going to be kind of hard for her to do that. But I look at it this way, and I'm very consistent about this. If you, as a public elected official, sexually assaulted somebody or raped somebody, and somebody files a lawsuit against you, then yes, I say go for it. I don't care who it is. Nobody is above the law. It just so happens to be that Trump is now the guy that has face in the music, and he's got to pay these damages. He says he won't do it, but I don't know how they're going to get about him to doing it, but he's going to have to do it eventually. But these other 91 charges in 4 different jurisdictions, this guy has got a lot coming at him in 2024, and he's still running for office, and people are still voting for him. So anyway, Flausny, go ahead. I know it's a lot to kind of unpack, but go ahead and give me your assessment on that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, there's a lot that you said there. I agree with. I think pretty much all of it, but it is very. It's insane that we're at this point that he was, liable for the damages of the assault, and then after defaming her and lying about it, he also was found guilty of that as well. And then I think what's really interesting about these charges is the amount that is punitive for him in this case because of how the jury saw it. And again, it's a jury that did this. It is not a, liberal judge that was appointed by Biden and the deep state. Like it's clearly like he just is, like you said, a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, some of that I could forgive. Like the actual facts of the case, I don't really care. Like if you're going to do some type of sexual impropriety and you are a powerful figure, I kind of expect that, to be honest. I know that's like bad to say and stuff, but I don't really, like, I would probably be defending some bad conduct if you were doing policies that I liked, to be honest. However, I think the bigger issue, like, and we shouldn't want that. Like, ideally, you should want somebody better, like Barack Obama, who never had anything like this happen.
Yeah.
Literally a saint, comparatively. But I think that what this does, and like the real story here, because I think that people are going to kind of forget about this just because, like you said, there's so many other charges going on with him and so many things around the election and stuff. I think what's really important to remember here is that this is proof that he was a liar. This was in court. He was determined to be a liar, that is his character in this. And he treats this like everything else that he treats. So why wouldn't he lie about the classified documents case? Why wouldn't he lie in terms of the hush money case? Why wouldn't he be lying when he's talking about Georgia that, I just meant them to find the votes that I needed? It just shows like his character, that he is such a flawed character. Like I could forgive if you are playing grab ass, if you're, if you're this, because I think that if you are going to be a leader of a country, especially a country like America, like you have to be a little bit sociopathic, like you have to have a little bit of dissociation there going on. So like, hey, if you're gonna, do what Bill Clinton did, okay, like does that affect your ability to be president? I don't really think so. If you're, hooking up with a co-ed and stuff, not the best, conduct. I'm not saying it's 100% forgivable, but I think that like when we're talking about what is this person doing, like as a person that's the chief executive of our nation, I'm not too worried about that. But the lying, the consistent lying, even when he's proved to being lying, and this is another important thing, the disrespect for the courts. I was one of those people in the beginning, like when Trump came out, that, hey, maybe he's an outsider, maybe he's going to shake things up. Like I definitely didn't vote for him, but I was like, hey, I don't want to like throw this guy out right away. Just because it was very clear that he was going to be the front runner before the election. But during the primary, or during, I think it was the general, it was after the primary when he was going against Hillary, I remember there was the judge from Mexico, and he was like, he can't rule on my cases because he's Mexican. And I was like, this guy has no respect for the separation of the court systems. And it was such a departure from like Bush, who like I was actually a supporter when I was younger of Bush. Like in my libertarian days, I actually liked what he was doing, especially like with going against Saddam. So like it's so different from what we've ever had before, that this guy doesn't respect the courts. He doesn't respect decisions of checks and balances. He thinks he's the only one that can be right, and anybody who goes against him needs to be demolished. And he's not going to respect anything that they do, like pay any damages, like give you documents if they request it over and over again. Like he's going to stand in the way. He's going to obstruct justice. He's going to lie to people. He's going to say, hey, I know that I won this election in Georgia by over 400,000 votes, but I just need you to find me 11,000. Oh, wait, so you don't need to find the other 300, whatever thousand, you just want the amount to win? No, so you don't actually care about the truth. You don't care about, this stuff being real. You just care about you being ahead, and you'll lie and cheat and do whatever. And this is proof of it. And I think that is the biggest deal what we're looking at here. Like that. And just one other thing I wanted to say. Sure. Like the not my type defense is the worst defense in the world. Like you were saying, when people are convicted of these crimes, when people do things like this, it's because they have opportunity and they have power, and they abuse those. Like most people that commit, acts against minors, it's not because they necessarily have had like these longings and feelings inside their head like all the time. That does happen sometimes, but normally it's because like they're in a position of power and then they abuse that power. Like that's what it comes down to. So like, what's the state? Like absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I mean, Trump is just a good example of somebody who is corrupt already, and then you give him power. It's like the inverse. So like, it's just going to snowball and make it even worse. So yeah, I think that it's damaging. It's definitely disqualifying as a president if he didn't have so many other marks against him already. But yeah, the big, like regardless of if he did this stuff to this woman, which it was found in court that he did, I think the bigger deal is just that he lies about it. And like if he's convicted of being a liar, that really has to like shake what Republicans are voting for. Like he's lying, and he's lying in court. Like you're really gonna vote for this guy, Republicans? It baffles me.
Yeah. Are you at all concerned about how many people are still gonna vote for him? I mean, yeah. Because here's the thing, like I tell people all the time now, I'm going to be voting for Joe Biden. I mean, there would have to be something really wrong. Like, it would have to be something that would be like, oh my God, I can't get on board with that anymore. And I tell people that all the time, right? But I'm just, when people tell me, I tell people why I'm voting for Joe Biden. I don't try to guilt people into voting for somebody they don't want to vote for. To me, that's not fair. and I told this to Tiberius last weekend, right? My last guest. I'm a firm believer.
Great name, by the way. Great name.
Really, really good guy. But I tell people is like, listen, this is why I'm voting for Joe Biden. I give him the policies, I give him and it's like, I know he's not perfect, and I don't expect somebody to be perfect. I don't expect you to be spotless and an angel, you know. But the thing is that you can't tell me that you don't want to vote for Joe Biden because you find him corrupt, you think he's a liar, you think he's like a dishonest person, and then you're gonna go vote for Donald Trump. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's just to me that just seems bass backwards in my personal opinion. So, but it's just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like when people like harp on like the lesser of two evils thing, I think there's two things that are going on that's an issue. One, I think that like lesser evil is always better. Like by definition, like if you have a choice and those are your only choices, like it's just like would you rather eat a mountain of shit or like just like dingleberry? Like you tell me. I would personally rather have the dingleberry rather than the mountain of shit. Like it's so obvious, you know what I mean? So that's number one. That it's the calculus that they're doing isn't correct. But I think number two, and I think that this is I think it comes from like partially the American individualism, partially kind of the negative side of, and as somebody who defends like liberal imperialism, the negative sides of liberalism where we get too atomized and too individualized and too into our own heads. People think about voting as an individual act, that I as an individual act am walking to the booth and then it is my moral decision about who I am going to, put my vote for. That isn't what voting is. Voting is a democratic communal process. We only vote together. You only vote if you organize people to vote together for similar interests because you guys all don't perfectly agree. That's the whole point of it. So like when people look at voting like, oh, I can't support this person, it's like, you're not like supporting the person. You're coming together with your community to fight against, tyrannical fascist forces. In this case, like sometimes it's just different values. Like I think that Bush and Gore were really just different values, but they both like believed in that like small L liberal like American identity that I think Trump and his fascist cronies like completely have obliterated, especially with January 6th. And with this though too, like lying in court and just saying, oh, I should be able to get away with it. Like no, like don't we care about rule of law? Don't we care about law and order and stuff?
Agreed.
So yeah, like I think that like thinking about voting as like this individual, oh, it's my moral action that I'm doing. Like it's like a perverse idea, and it's like that's why I'm going to vote for somebody who's a third party candidate when we have winner take all electoral college systems like in like 48 states. It would be one thing if we did just have like a popular vote for, president. I could argue, like I could see like the arguments for, hey, we need to get a third party and you talking bad about third parties doesn't help us. But in the current format that we have for a presidential election, it's going to be a Republican or a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Like those parties are not breaking anytime soon. Yeah. Like the support would have to break for them to break. And it seems like the support for both sides is shoring up even more. So yeah, that's like I think that like idea, like voting as an individual act, is like a very perverse idea. That is like one of the negative sides of liberalism. When it's like that's like a community act. You are coming together to vote. Like who gets the president? Not like the best person who got your specific vote. Who got the most votes? So you have to think about like you have to be strategic with who you're voting for and like do it as a community. And that's why organizing is so important. That's why you have to canvass. That's why you have to get out. That's why you have to remind people like that are already registered voters, that already registered a D on their thing. Hey, let me knock on your door. Do you know that this election is happening then? Oh, and that actually does tangibly help them. That's why people pay, staffers to do that.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I mean, it's just, this is why it's so important for people to just, get out their vote. Now, before we move on to our next topic, one thing I'm definitely gonna say is that like, I'm all for like third parties. I think like we need to allow more people on the debate stage because I think it gives I don't care what party the affiliation they are, just as long within reason, of course. Like I would be okay with seeing libertarian, independent, Green Party, communist, socialist. I wouldn't care. I mean, I would much rather see more options. That way it gives people an idea of what to look for. Even if it's like a waste of time, I think like people having more options to see who's on the ticket is more beneficial. It might be far-fetched. It might be just like wishful thinking, but that's just my personal opinion though, of course.
No, and that sentiment I don't actually necessarily agree with. But taking it out of the general is far too late. The reason why we have the issue with the parties that you're discussing is because the parties, the DNC and the RNC, are individual corporations that decide how they want to vote with the party members of each state.
Sure.
It's not actually like we have like a freedom to do it. So the primary system needs to be dismantled before you can worry about the general election. So that's like why when you go into state elections, I would think a very different turn about third parties. Like state elections for the most part are going to be a winner take all, where like having third party makes a lot more sense and stuff. Sure. And if the reason why what you're talking about doesn't happen is because the RNC and the DNC work together with the news networks to then and it's not like a big conspiracy. It's just like that's they follow the path of least resistance. You know what I mean? That's the easiest way to do it.
Sure.
Yeah, like, so that's where all the eyes are, like that. They have no interest in having novel politicians that aren't going to bring anything to the debate stage in terms of like eyes or viewership.
Sure.
And if they did, then they would be a big voting bloc, and they would already probably be part of the party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I think that going after the party system first and trying to open up, like, I think that all primaries should be open. I don't understand. Why can't I change my party affiliation like at the day of voting? Like, I don't understand why I can't vote for whoever I want that's on the ballot.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of actually. I forget exactly what it's called. Oh, approval voting. It's where when you have a ballot, you don't just get one vote. So you can vote for multiple people on the ballot if you want to like give somebody else support too. Like, hey, like I want to vote for Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, like because I want, I like both of them for whatever reason. Or like in the general, I want to vote for Gary Johnson and Trump if you wanted to be that type of person.
Yeah.
So I like that type of voting too. That gives people more options. But I think like once it gets to the general, and we're clearly not changing the rules, we're clearly not abolishing the electoral college. Like clearly the states are going to still do winner take all in all the states except for like Nebraska and like New Hampshire, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like at that point, you know what I mean? Like you have to say, okay, who are we really gonna support with our actual vote?
Yep, I hear you. Yep. Anyway, I think we've kind of like I mean, I know we kind of like deviated from like the actual court case, but it was good that we kind of went into like voting and knowing who you're voting for. So go ahead and give us your first current event.
Oh well, I will just say one last thing on the court case, just because we ran through that so quick. One of the reasons we were able to run through it so quick is because the court ran through it so quick. It was 3 hours of deliberation.
Yep.
That's nothing. That's like it was open and shut, like as far as we're concerned. So
yeah, that is pretty funny.
So
isn't
it? So that's why I think we were able to be. Yeah, that's obviously bad.
Yeah.
So then the next current event, I'm going to start with my heavy one. I think
Hit me.
is generally I just wanted to talk about the war in Palestine because even though it started on October 7th, it's still going on. We're over 20,000 dead civilians for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's a not good thing overall, just like that there's war. But sometimes not good things happen. And my perspective on it, I am much more aggressive than some people when it comes to some foreign policy things. And I want to say everything with a caveat because I'm not Israeli, I'm not Palestinian. I am for all intents and purposes, even though I don't identify as white because I'm Italian, but I am, a white American liberal who's, living in the middle class relatively, just, doing my thing. So I could be swayed by propaganda, and that's why I think the things I do. However, from my point of view, I think that all the calls for a two-state solution are absolutely insane. I think that there needs to be one state. I think it needs to be Israel. I think that any state that would come about in the West Bank or Gaza would be a humiliation to the people of that state because there's no natural resources. There is no population there. There's no infrastructure. And it's not going to be tenable for those populations. And they serve a huge security interest to Israel. So I think that those lands should be annexed, for lack of a better word, or taking over in some way with direct security measures by Israel, because there's just going to be more bombs coming out of these places, and they have to stop that. There's just no excuse for that. Or they have to do some work with Jordan and Egypt to get them to take some of the land and people. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So I think we're just going to see constant war because of how the parties are aligned. But I think the only way that you actually solve this problem is if you say, hey, the people living here are going to be part of another country. The whole entire idea of a Palestinian country is a dead idea. It, like, every single person who advocates for that, I say this a little bit extremist. I think that they have a little bit of blood on their hands. Like, I think they're pushing for something that, like, the fight for it is so outlandish that, like, you are literally, like, just hurting people by having them fight for this cause. And I think that the more that people act like the Palestinian cause has any right to exist, the more it gets people called what I call the intoxication revolution. They get intoxicated on this idea that they are doing something righteous and just, and that allows them to do more heinous acts because it is for the ends that they see as more morally superior. So they're okay with blowing up civilians, with letting their own brothers and sisters and children die, because if this happens, this can lead to the goals that we want and this glorious thing. And I'm willing to let my children die. That's how much I care about this cause. It's an infectious idea, and a lot of people have it. Tinkies have it, to an extent. I have it as a liberal. And I don't really care about the history at all. I care about liberal values being spread across the world. Israel is far more liberal, even though it's not perfect, than anything that Palestine has produced. And with the constant war that they have, I think that there's no real other path to peace. And because I don't think my idea is going to be to possible in the near future. I think that we're just going to have these constant wars where like Israel slowly encroaches on the land until basically what I'm saying happens, but with Israel being a lot more brutal in the process, which is definitely something we have to watch out for, even though I said everything is set.
Okay. So you got to be ready for this. So,
yeah, it's definitely a little bit of an out there view.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I bring people on for a reason, diversity of thought. I mean, that's what we do, right? We have these conversations, even if they're really uncomfortable. So this is my point of view, and I've been following this pretty closely. Most people have interesting takes when it comes down to Israel and Palestine. Here's mine. I'm for the Israeli people. I'm against Benjamin Netanyahu. I am for the Palestinian people. I am completely against Hamas and the PLO, because both sides, like, it's the governments that actually want these wars and conflicts to continue. The people do not. There's actually been, I listened to a podcast years ago where there was Israelis and Palestinians that would gather in one side, either in Palestine or in Israel, whether it's a mosque or a neutral ground, and they would pray for each other because, you've got Israeli people that are being murdered by Hamas, and then you've got Palestinian people that are being murdered by Israelis, and there is no other way to look at this. It's some of these killings I've seen are not justified by Israel, and they are not justified by Hamas or whoever else is involved. There is no justification, especially when it comes to killing innocent people. But when you've got people like a journalist getting shot by a sniper when they are clearly not a threat, that's a problem. I have a huge problem with that, because and ever since, we can all agree that what happened October 7th was horrendous. It was horrible. I denounce it 100% completely. But I think Israel's reaction has been a great overreaction. Let's put it this way, because, if they said that they were just taking out Hamas targets, then yes. If all their targets were just Hamas targets, yes, I would agree with you. But a lot of the people that are being killed have no ties, and all you're doing is you're throwing more people into the cause of Hamas, because Hamas is saying, look what they're doing to you. Look what Israel is doing to you right now. And because that's exactly what Israel is doing. They are playing, and I think a lot of it has to do with the warmongering by Benjamin Netanyahu. I think he wants this conflict to continue. He does not care about his own people. He's just using them as a means to an end. But when I look at this, right, when I see people's houses being bulldozed, when they had nothing to do with it, when I see hospitals being blown up because they say, oh, these are tactical locations, maybe I just haven't looked enough into this, but there's a reason as to why we never bombed hospitals. They were strictly off limits unless it was proven. And there is a lot of bureaucracy, especially within the U.S. military, and it seems like all that red tape just evaporates with Israel. I'm a firm believer in this, right? I know when it comes to war, having been deployed multiple times to Iraq and Afghanistan, I can tell you that war is really, really complicated. There are times like where you cannot wait for the rules of engagement. There are times like where you have to make a decision or you're all gonna fucking die. It's that simple. I just think that there are times, like, in base what I've seen, like on videos, on social media, and I know some of it can be altered, but I've seen children being blown to pieces, and they did not find any weapons or any Hamas in the area. That is egregious. But for some reason, Israel likes to chalk it up to collateral damage. We seem to say collateral damage when it's certain people, but when it's other people, like when Israel gets attacked, it's an act of terrorism. When children and men, women, and innocent children die on Palestine, it's collateral damage. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. It's fucked completely. And I'm not saying that, that there isn't a possibility that Hamas is involved or that Hamas is using human shields. I have no doubt about that, because Hamas doesn't follow the law of war. They don't follow the rules of armed conflict, and nor do we expect them to follow this. But Israel, however, does. They have that expectation of them, but they just seem to be ignoring that because they just want to win so badly. And they say, we're just trying to reclaim our homelands. Well, do I think that there will ever be a two-state solution? Not in my lifetime. I'm just being a realist. There's not going to be a two-state solution or a one-state solution. They're just going to blow each other to smithereens. And I'm just going to be straight up about this. There's people in the Muslim world that are outraged by this, but I don't see them doing too much anything to help the Palestinian people, which I feel, I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong. There could be like countries that are taking in refugees, but I'm not really seeing enough support. But there are Muslim people out there that are saying, we condemn what happened on October 7th, But look at these children that are blown to pieces right now. I mean, we cannot ignore this. We cannot ignore that Israel is just as fucked up. And if people want to like do whataboutisms, well, the U.S. did this. Yeah, I'll agree with you. There's some things that we did that were completely fucked up, things that we shouldn't have done. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about Israel and Palestine right now. I think that the best way to solve this is by, one, getting rid of the Zionism. Now, for the record, Zionism does not necessarily mean anti-Semitic. It just means that you're against this power structure, this right-wing extremist power structure that Zionism actually is. Getting rid of that, and then getting rid of Hamas and the PLO, and then bringing whoever you put in charge back to the negotiation table. But that's never going to happen. Why? Because we have reached the point of no return, essentially. It's going to basically come down to which side has the biggest stick, essentially, and who is going to come out on top, essentially. That's just my point of view.
Yeah, and I'll kind of go through some of your points in reverse order there, because I that last point that you made, I don't actually disagree with what you said too, and that last point is really important too. I think that we can condemn the means that they're waging war, but if they're both waging war in inappropriate ways, which I don't know if I would fully that, I definitely wouldn't equalize them. I think that you could make arguments why Hamas has to conduct war the way that they do, or like why they're so egregious with the way that they do actions. But I think that the scale of the way that they conduct war is definitely a lot different. There's definitely a lot more restraint on the Israeli side, which you would expect from them having more means and everything. And like you said, there's a different standard that they hold themselves to. But I think that at the end of the day, what's the purpose that they're fighting for? Even if they do use bad means, what are we going to be left for? So if we have two inappropriate belligerents in a conflict, then what I'm looking at more for is, okay, once the dust settles, regardless of how that dust gets there, like what kind of nation state are we going to have here? What kind of laws are we going to have governing the people? And any laws that I can think that would come from any of the major parties in Palestine would be oppressive laws by my standards as a liberal, Westerner. And again, maybe I'm just unaware of how enlightened my submission to Allah could be. If sorry, I said that a little bit too much there. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm not too aggressive. But yeah, like my submission, like to the Lord and everything, like how that could actually free me and how that could save me from my degeneracy, and like if I just need these more strict rules on how I should guide my life, and take away like my freedom of speech and submit to that more, maybe that would actually be better and more enlightening for me. I don't think so. I'm a Westerner. I'm a liberal. I like the freedoms that I have. But I do agree that Bibi is a major issue. But Bibi is also a product of Likud. You know what I mean? And the Likud party supports him so much because he does have a very impressive history. I mean, he did like some pretty impressive actions like in the military that got him a lot of heroic cause. And when you said that he doesn't care about his people or anything, I disagree with that. And I think you might have said it a little bit hyperbolically. I think that he suffers from the same issue I was talking about before. I think he is intoxicated on revolution. I think he fight Nazis. And I don't think he realizes that the scale isn't there. But like I do understand where that sentiment comes from. Just like I understand the Palestinian people, like, hey, we are fighting for the land that was ours. That was ours for so long, even though they didn't have a nation state on there or anything. But being there for a long time and entrenching your values in that place, I think does hold some weight to an identity there of the locals. I don't think it's necessarily quote unquote Palestinian. I think that is only a product of the Israeli attack there. But I think when we look at the way that they're waging war, like now. We look after the dust settles. Okay, but now let's talk about like what's happening when the dust is up. I think that we have different standards for us when we look at the wars that we're doing in Iraq because of how many resources we have versus what Israel's going through. They have a lot of resources, but it's not infinite. And they only have so much manpower with so much like that they have to do with so many tunnels and everything. Like there's a lot that they have to do, and they have different red tape that they have to go through. So some things are easier for them. Some things are a little bit more complicated. But I think that when we look at how we're waging war, we say that the bombing's indiscriminate, and this is a little bit speculation on my part, but from everything that I understand, it seems like October 7th was a huge failure. I've wanted to call Bibi the blind because I think like he was just he thought it was all coming from the West Bank. He thought that's where everything was. All he had to do was get his people out of Gaza and everything would be good, and he just did not see this coming. And I think that failure of intelligence led to the air campaign being able to say, hey, we're going to take out any possible target that we want. We don't care if there's people in there because our intelligence could be faltered. So if we have anything that even hints that we can go there, we're just going to go in and bomb it. And we're going to say, hey, if we're wrong, we would rather be wrong and blow it up than not blow it up and let another October 7th happen. So I think that's what's happening behind the scenes. Obviously, I'm not in those meetings. I don't know. But just given by everything, that's the way it seems. And the third part about waging war is a lot of times when we're looking at everything, we see, oh no, you bombed a building with journalists, you bombed a hospital, you bombed all these things. And we look from the outside, why would Israel bomb those? And from what I've seen, again, this could be wrong, or they could be lying about their targets, or they could, have such faulty intelligence, they just don't care, they just have a reason to go. But from what I've seen, Israel relies heavily on its not its intelligence, it's technology and its smart things and its radars and everything. So a lot of the jamming technology that the Palestinians have, which isn't a lot, they use in those buildings and everything. So when they blow up the infrastructure and everything, they blow up that so they can use their better equipment to come in. Because if not, you're asking them to send their troops in to die basically while being blind by not being able to use their radars the correct way. So that's like justification that I've heard. But like I said, I think it's happening more just because there was such a failure on October 7th that they were like, hey, if we even have a possible target, we don't care. So I think that that's my main issue when I look at it. It's like, okay, if we look at how these two parties are waging war, Israel seems to have a lot more restraint, even though we can definitely condemn a lot of things that they can do. I think that Bibi is not the type of secular leader that we want. However, October 7th type attacks are just going to give us more of this Zionism. I don't need to quibble on the definitions of Zionism. I would disagree with you a little bit. Mm-hmm. I get what you mean by the sentiment there, like that strong evocation of Zionism. But I think that when we look at Bibi and the Likud party, and then we look at Hamas and Palestine, we have to not be too infantilizing to either party and act like, oh, everybody just wants peace like us. No, I think a lot of these people just want to fight. I think that, and like I said, you get intoxicated on this revolution. If you can fight for something that you think is just, what else is there worth doing with your life? That is one of the greatest callings that you can feel. Especially if you're not directly in the fight, especially if you're a leader that's living in another country that has your donations paid for, that doesn't have to worry about, you know what I mean? You're very, very intoxicated on the idea of fighting then. Yeah. Which, that's the Hamas leader. So I think that that's why when I zoom out, okay, how do I think the dust will settle? Only with Israel taking all the territory. I don't see any, even if they had a two-state solution, I think that state would be embarrassed by its existence because it would be discontinuous. It would, have no natural resources. So it would lead to just war from that state again. So I think the only way that this is ever going to end, which probably will take 50, 100 years, will be Israel annexing all the land proper or divvying it up around Jordan and Egypt.
So here's one thing I'd like to ask you regarding this. Okay, so October 7th happened. What was it? How many people died from that? It was like 1,700 people, or was it like 3,400 people?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So
I think it was 12. I thought it was 1,200.
Yeah, okay. We'll just settle on 1,200 for now. I'm not trying to distinguish, but I don't have it pulled up right now. So anyway, 1,200 people died. The response has been 100-fold, 200, 300-fold. I mean, 1,000-fold even, right? Now, do you think their response is going to actually cause the Palestinian people to say, okay, listen, we'll help? Because there are people out there that are saying, well, listen, if they just want to give this up, you just need to give Hamas up. Do you think that the Palestinian people are actually going to be willing to give up any Hamas, to save themselves? Honestly.
Well, I'll answer that question, but do you think that waging war works? If you wage war, you do meet your goals, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you can.
War is a necessary evil. It's an absolute necessity. It's war is
not.
But
it does a job, right? It is. Yeah, and it is a tool. Bombing, when people simplify it to, oh, you're just going to bomb these people to agreeing with you. Is that what we did with Japan? Kind of. Is that what we did with the Nazis? Kind of. If you want to simplify it to that, there's a lot more that has to go on to that. There has to be people coming from both parties that are coming into this.
Yep.
And I think that to be in kind of a morose way, the constant bombing, I think that. I think the absolute decimation of the military might of these terrorist organizations can only lead to a Nelson Mandela, a Martin Luther type character coming out of that eventually, even if it takes a long ass time, and even if it's really, really hard with Islam because they have a warlord for a prophet, and that leads to, obviously that's oversimplifying, but it's a lot different than the hippie socialist that Jesus was, if you want to characterize him like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things going on that would have to get to that point where we could really be having talks. But I think that right now there's too much intoxication of revolution on both sides. So I think that I don't think that anybody wants to. When Destiny talks about this, he the one novel thing that I think he says on this, because a lot of times he talks about he doesn't say novel stuff. I think when he talks about both sides, but they think that'll help us, and only one side doesn't. I think that is true. I think at the end of the day that's true. However, I don't think that there's any way that a two-state solution stops the fighting. I don't know. If we do that, who's to say that that another Palestinian leader wouldn't come out and be like, oh no, we don't even have land connection to our brothers and sisters, and all the land in between that was originally our land that Muslim blood was spread, and we need a new jihad here, and blah blah blah, and we this is our land. I feel like that's just going to start again. And if you give them a state that they can build a military out of and control borders and everything, like people are like, oh no, you can't have concrete in Gaza. Like, yeah, because they use it to make bomb shelters and stuff. Like, which you don't want them because you want to. And like when I say bomb shelters, I don't mean like for their people. I mean like for their munitions, so they can keep sending off rockets.
Yeah.
So like I do think that we can like. If we want to simplify it, I do think we can bomb them into compliance. But I think that there's a lot more that goes on besides just the bombing. And if you just do the bombing, it's never going to work. Like, you have to bring them to the table, like we did with Hirohito. You know what I mean? Like, you bring them to the table. You know, we put you on the front cover with you standing next to, you know, General MacArthur, making you look like a little boy. But, you know, you get to run your country. And I think that if there's a character that comes up, like a Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, I think that's really the only way that Palestinians are going to have a shot at peace. And until that happens, it's just going to be this, you know, both sides hitting each other.
The reason why I asked you that question in that format is because people think that, you know, if the more Israel bombs Palestine, people are eventually going to start giving up Hamas. The reason why that's wishful thinking and it's completely naive, I'm just going to give one example, right? So in 2008, when we were in Iraq, we did atmospherics, right? And we found out that people did not really talk to us very much. And like I wouldn't say we were being brash about it. I just said like we're just like asking people for information. Well, in one district, people didn't really tell us anything. And the reason why that was is because we found out that the last unit I think was in rotation ahead of us. There was a guy that, you know, told them things, and the militia found out, and they went to his house and they butchered his entire family and made him watch.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that, like, you know, if a Palestinian family tried to come forward, for once, for starters, I don't think Israel's going to guarantee their protection whatsoever, because they're just going to look at that family, because every country will do this, like, and say, yeah, we'll look out for you. That's only going to last for so long, because that family is going to be in danger for the rest of their life. Let alone the fact that, let's say that Israel doesn't help them, like, right away. The word's going to get out. The word is going to leak, and then that family is going to get butchered. So when it comes down to it, the reason why they're not going to help this solution is, one, they're in league with Hamas or the PLO. Two, they don't want to get involved because they feel like no matter what they do, they're going to lose, essentially. And three, it's because they are afraid for their families, essentially. It's a really screwed up situation, and the thing is that they are all, like, these people are caught in the middle. They don't want to get involved in war, just like, and I'm saying this with the Israeli people as well, the Israeli civilians as well. But the amount of Palestinians that have been, you know, blown to pieces because Hamas launched this attack. Hamas isn't paying the price, the people are. But the thing is, though, Hamas is using this as a recruiting campaign. It's like, look what they're doing to you. Look what they're doing to you. We're looking out for y'all kind of deal. And I feel like this, right now, the people are trying to escape. There are people that are trying to leave the war zone because they don't want their families to be blown to pieces. But at the same time, they don't want their children to be recruited into Hamas, essentially. But they're stuck in the middle because, hey, go to the southern part, go to the southern quarter. Then the southern corridor gets bombed.
Egypt doesn't want you.
Yeah. Well, then they get bombed by Israel once again.
Yeah.
Even though they're falling. Yeah. It's just like no matter what they do, they are screwed, essentially. And again, it's wishful thinking for me to say you got to get rid of these leaders that want the war, get rid of these people, and then you can come to the table. But even like the Nelson Mandela bit, Nelson Mandela is one man, and South Africa is still dealing with problems right now. To this day.
Yeah, it's not perfect. So there was a lot of issues with how that was.
Because I look at it like this, right? Democracy only works for countries that want it. Because, like, for example, when we bounced Saddam out of Kuwait, right, we were able to kind of help Kuwait rebuild, you know, use of the oil and whatnot. We were able to help them kind of bounce back, essentially. But that's because they kind of wanted, I mean, they still have, like, you know, the Islam way of thinking, Islam as the primary religion. And I've been to Kuwait multiple times. It's I would say it's a metropolis if you believe in a desert being a metropolis, I guess. But the thing is, though, just because it worked in Kuwait does not mean it's going to work in Iraq. It's not going to work in Afghanistan. It's not going to work it's only going to work if countries want it. Israel thinking that, you know, these people are just going to roll over and die, it's not going to freaking happen, because these people feel like Israel is the invader, and Israel feels like they're the invader. Both sides, and again, this is why I say it's going to come down to who has the biggest stick, and I worry about the future. Israel does have the bigger stick because they've got our backing, essentially. So,
Well, even without us, they are like they made the Uzi. Like they make their own tanks. They have their own tanks that are so big because they don't have to go. They don't have to be transported over any different types of roadways because they only have to deal with Israeli roadways. So like they have a very very strong industry and stuff. So like they will be okay. Like if America decided to cut off Israel, like it would hurt them, but like they would be okay. Like the idea that they would just roll over, no. Like if anything, the country would just go even more military.
Yeah.
Like yeah. But so I think that the issue that we're having here is that when we look at what Israel is doing with their military, the IDF specifically, they're blowing up a lot of civilians, and that sucks. Nobody wants that to happen. However, my whole question is, are they taking away the military capabilities of Hamas? And if they're doing that, I support those actions. If they're not doing that, like I said, if they're just saying, hey, we heard that a guy might be in this building here, so we're going to blow up the whole building, okay. However, that's not what it seems like what's happening. It seems like there's a few bombs that it seems that there's a lot of bombs that are going. I think that in the beginning, the 6,000 bombs that went off in like 2 days, I think that was a fucking a lot. Like I think that's when they literally just said, okay, whatever target we have, we are hitting. Like even if it's a 1% on the scale, they are just throwing everything out there. But I think that as the war's gone on, they have been a lot more measured. I mean, like you even hear the like when they talk about like, oh no, this one guy was hit and he took out so many people, but like they look at the munitions and it's like a highly targeted munition that was like literally hit the guy right in himself, but these people were right next to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like so I support those the attacks that are doing that kind of stuff. And if it happens to hit civilians, that sucks. I wish that it didn't, but that is going to be a price of war sometimes. And I know that a lot of stuff sounds like sociopathic. I think you have to be sociopathic a little bit to disassociate yourself. If you start to care about every single person, you're gonna break yourself. There's too many people going through too much shit. Sure. Like if you care about all that, like you're gonna drown yourself in emotion. Yeah. So like you have to detach yourself a little bit. So like to the extent that they're doing those attacks that are just hey, we think that there might be somebody here. We don't care. Blow up this place, and maybe there's a playground right next door. That's fucked up. And I'm not saying that Israel never does that. The difference is, of course, Hamas will target those kind of places. So, like, again, the scale is a lot different. And I think that when it comes to taking away military capability, I think it's really hard to judge, especially in this and especially when we see Hamas repurpose so much. I mean, I'm sure you saw the infamous Hamas propaganda video where they have water pipes that were donated for humanitarian purposes turning into rockets. Like, it's like that's what they're showing to the world. Like it's just a fuck you to the whole idea of the humanitarian operation. But having said all that, like having said all the bad shit that they've done, I do think that like on the Israeli side, like even like in this one state solution that like I envision there, and I think it would kind of be like a one state, two systems or three systems, like to really make it work. I don't think there would be like a full incorporation right away.
Sure.
But I think that there does need to be a respect for the property rights of Palestinians that were trampled on. Like, yeah, it's war, but like there's still this property there. So I do think there does need to be some payment of reparations. They do need to talk about some right of return for some amount of people, or at least cutting off the ability for other people. So, okay, we're going to let this, whatever. There needs to be some level of that. And like they have to work towards that. There's one thing that you said though. It's like that's what I think that Israel needs to do. So they have to basically be a little bit more discriminate with their warfare. But that's really hard to say when, again, it's so much easier to send a bomb rather than to send your own soldiers. And when you only have your own soldiers and when you're surrounded by enemies, you're very reluctant to use the most, as somebody who's been in the military, the most important asset is the people themselves. And like you said, they don't have a lot of Palestinians that they can work with. Like they have to do this themselves. It really is like they're not going to get too much intelligence, and especially after so much intelligence was failed. So many people that like worked with Palestinians that were crossing the border, they later found out that they were actually involved in the October 7th attacks. That they were collecting information by like doing these jobs, like to try to help the Palestinian economy and stuff by working in Israel and like getting those better wages. It's really fucked up. But there was one last thing that you said, like that democracy only works in a country that wants it. I agree with the spirit of what you're saying. However, it's kind of a paradox when you say that because you don't know what a country wants without democracy. Like you're just kind of going off vibes to hope that, you know what I mean? Who's willing to fight against it really is just who's willing to fight against the power structures. So I think that like we can kind of nation build a little bit with democracy, but I think we have to be a lot more subtle about it the way that we were in Japan. Like we were like, okay, here, Tito, you can still be the emperor, you can still do your stuff, but like you got to like follow these rules. And if we didn't try to like make a power structure, like make our own Senate, make our own thing, and just kind of let them go that way. And obviously the Japanese people had like they already kind of were adopting Western ideas before that, so it's a lot different. But I think that we can kind of build out democracy, and that's kind of my goal as like a liberal imperialist to see more democracies in the world broadly. So because of that, like that's really the goals that I support. I think we were talking a little bit before the show. Like we can be a little bit more honest because we're not policyholders and stuff. And I'm not going to just vote in American interest all the time. I understand that like that's what policyholders are going to do. You have to do this, and everybody coming together. So it's going to be American hegemonic interest versus whatever we're going to be facing against when it really comes down to brass tacks.
Sure.
But like I do have ideals, and my ideals are to spread democracy worldwide. So like again, when the dust settles, where are we going to have more democracy and liberalism? Like most likely under Israel. If it switched, if Palestinian became way more secular and Israel, which is very possible, became way more like into the religious side of Zionism, then I could totally switch my opinions on who I support. But that's where my support lies. Like who is going to actually be fighting for the values that I want. And then the middle of like what type of warfare they're doing is kind of granular because of what happens afterwards. But like obviously we should condemn like the bad things when they happen. The question is just how much of those things are really bad things versus how much do they have to do so that way they can save Israeli life on their side, and how much is just like I don't care, like I heard that this guy was living in this building. So yeah. It's tough to say without the books being open, which probably won't be for a couple decades, which but history's done.
No, I got you. Yeah, it's really tricky. Like when you make a decision, it's easy for everybody to like Monday morning quarterback the decision you made.
Yeah.
I just think that like there are times like when I feel it's a bit too indiscriminate at times, but again, like that's my only thing because like I'm.
Like 6,002 days is fucking crazy, man.
It really is. It really is, and that's my whole entire point. I mean, I know I understand like shock and awe when it comes down to taking down like big time infrastructure to like cripple the military and like their capabilities and whatnot, but it just 20,000 children.
20,000 people, I think. I don't think it's 20,000 children.
It's like it might be 20,000 people, but it's like.
I mean, I say that, but to be honest, like the numbers the numbers don't mean anything to me because like if somebody was like trying to kill me, like and then like I killed them and then their family came after me, and if that happened like an infinite amount of times, I'm okay with killing. Like as long as the human race doesn't go extinct, I'm okay with killing every other
in Minecraft.
Yeah. Okay, of course, yeah. The zombie race I'm talking about.
Yeah, the zombie race. Yeah,
the pixels. Yeah. But yeah, like in terms of just like the self-defense thing. Yeah, it's know what I mean. That calculus doesn't really matter to me. I'm more focused on like, okay, how did we get here? Like, are you trying to hurt me? Like, then I can slap you with a pillow. You know what I mean? But I'm not gonna slap you with a pillow if you're not trying to harm me. But I don't think that if somebody's trying to slap me with a pillow, I shouldn't be allowed to slap them with a pillow.
Yeah, so. I got you. So anyway, if it's okay with you, we'll move on to the next current event, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think that we went through this a lot. Yeah, but I just want one last thing. Sure. BB the Blind. We have to see that because BB literally was blind on this whole entire thing. It's such a good name. Like get it started.
BB the Blind. Gotcha. All right.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, I can't stand him honestly. My next current event is so there's already enough buzz going around about Taylor Swift and football player Travis Kelce for the Kansas City Chiefs. They've been dating since before the football season essentially started. She's pretty much been to every single one of his games. She's cheering on with him and his mother. And now that the Chiefs are going to be playing against the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship game tomorrow, let's just say that people don't want to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl specifically because they don't like Taylor Swift. They don't want to see her at the Super Bowl, okay? Fine. Now, there's people out there that don't like Taylor Swift. I get it, okay? I don't listen to her music, but some people don't like her because of her music. They don't like her because of her politics. They think she's a spoiled brat. There's some foofy person that just should keep her opinions to herself kind of deal. But this isn't the topic of discussion, though. The issue is that there have been deepfake AIs that have been made about Taylor Swift, okay? And these deepfake AIs is like, as of right now, they are lewd and pornographic, essentially, right? The media images that have been traced to a group on Telegram, they haven't said what the name was, but it's a hotbed for right-wing extremists and groypers and people that partake in this misogyny kind of deal. They generated these lewd images of Taylor Swift in sexual positions with football players on the Kansas City Chiefs, essentially. Now, Taylor Swift is not the only person that's been subjected to this, okay? Other celebrities and streamers in the Twitch community have had to deal with these AI deepfakes, to which they have faced harassment, stalkers, and threats to their lives because of these deepfakes, essentially. Now, Taylor Swift, on many occasions, has already had to deal with harassment in her personal life while performing on stage. She's been attacked by people on stage. Like, I saw a video of a guy that, like, hopped up on the stage and, like, tried to grab her, and the bouncers eventually got to her. But, she carried on. She finished the concert. But I can't imagine, like, what she was thinking at that point of, like, another person attacking her, essentially. Now, security definitely fell asleep on that one, but, it is what it is. Now, this is prominent in the world of pop culture and social media, and yet it still continues. Now, when it comes down to it, some people might think AI deepfakes, it's completely harmless. I don't really think it's harmless because, let's say, for example, if somebody does an AI generated image of me getting fucked by a goat, okay, I'm probably gonna laugh my ass off because it's hilarious and it's absurd, right? Now, if somebody like was to flip that and put me in with a child, that's a different story because then people could buy into that and people could spread that and make it seem like I'm a pervert, essentially. I would definitely have a problem with that kind of deal, right? And I feel like somebody is trying to tarnish my image, essentially. And I feel people are doing the same thing with Taylor Swift. Now, people can have their opinions of Taylor Swift all they want to. I think seems like a really nice person. She's the only person that's done more Make-A-Wish and done things for charities is like John Cena, celebrity-wise. Like in the San Francisco area, she donated enough money and donated enough food that it's going to feed 500,000 families, essentially, over a period of time, which I think is good, over a year. She does stuff like this all the time. She takes care of the staff that work for her. She takes care of the truck drivers that haul her equipment across the country. I mean, she seems like a genuine nice person, and people are just doing this because they're just haters, essentially. They don't like her because she has strong opinions. She's left-leaning. She doesn't like, misogyny. She doesn't like these things. And people are doing these images, and they think it's not causing any real harm. I'd say it's causing some significant harm because they are portraying her in a negative light. Now, we can make the argument, well, this is freedom of speech. Okay, well, freedom of speech has consequences. But before we kind of do our little back and forth with it, go ahead and give me your thoughts on that.
All right. Oh wait. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. My computer just glitched out for a second there. I was taking a couple notes there.
Sure.
Because I think that this is actually a really interesting issue. By the way, total Swiftie. I mean, she wears short skirts. I wear t-shirts. I love that shit.
Yeah.
That's great. I could definitely jam with some T Swift.
Sure.
And also, you got to respect John Cena.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously. But obviously, this topic has nothing to do with really any of the people that it's about. Because somebody could make deepfakes of John Cena tomorrow. I don't know how you would really see that though, because where would he even be in the picture? It's really
Exactly.
just he's gonna be just having a blank screen.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I love
right.
that guy.
No, he's great good.
So yeah, I think that when people talk about AI in this issue, it's kind of a red herring. Because AI isn't really the issue at all, because you can already do all this stuff with Photoshop. You can make all technology existing. So people need to kind of get over AI and act like it's stealing stuff and doing all this and blah 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 blah. And to the extent that it is, we have to deal with that with fair use, with our current statutes. However, I do think that with modern technology, there is obviously going to be some nuance to go in that. And what this really comes down to is harassment, because that's what it is at the end of the day. However, like you said, there is the free speech side of it. Do you have the freedom to create art that depicts somebody that is a public figure in a way that you don't want? So my biggest issue with the whole AI stuff is that you don't know if it's real or not. It looks so good right now that it can pass as real. So I think that there needs to be a disclaimer that this is all fake. That needs to be apparent on the media and on the platforms that are going to host this if they want to be depicting people that are public figures. And then I think that we really need to reevaluate how we judge public figures and their likeness. Because what if I just create somebody that's 99% like Taylor Swift? You know what I mean? Or I just change a few ratios around to make it a little bit different, or I get the worst versions of the deep fake, and those are the only ones that I post that don't look exactly like her. So it's definitely a tricky issue with how exactly to regulate it, but there does need to be some new regulation, which tangentially, this is also why we need to vote for younger politicians a lot of times. Not like that younger makes you infinitely better, but our Senate should not have an average age of 67, I think, or something like that. These people can't really relate to the issues that we're dealing with.
Sure.
But clearly it's harassment. I mean, you're making nude depictions and you're sending them. Same thing like revenge porn. And this is basically faking revenge porn. But if you put it in a category of, okay, we are saying this is parody, we are saying this is fake, then it gets really tricky for how are we going to regulate that? Because I am very, very strong in free speech. That's obviously, as a liberal imperialist, if you can't say what you want, that's the biggest thing. And really, they are just creating content. So to what extent can you do this? And I'm also not really a big fan of a lot of IP laws. I think they're a little bit too strict, just how Steamboat Willie was recently, or Steamboat Mickey, the Mickey Mouse thing that was on a steamboat and that just came out of public, it just came into public domain because it's 99 years or something. It's an old cartoon where Mickey Mouse is on a steamboat. It's now up to public domain. People can make variations of that, and they won't get copyrighted.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there are some laws like that are a little bit too strict on copyright. The AI dives into, which I think is a little bit of a harder issue to deal with than the likeness. I think that we can have some protection of likeness that just it has to be updated for the 21st century. But one thing that's really important to remember, and I believe Christopher Hitchens said this. I don't know if he said it first, but freedom of speech is not freedom of information. You can't say it's my freedom of speech to send you the nuclear launch codes. If that, obviously you can't really just send nuclear launch codes. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You don't have the freedom of speech to just say, hey, this is how exactly you make a virus or something like that. Like the information can be protected, but you can still have freedom to talk about that. So I actually think that you should have freedoms to call for violence and stuff like that, in a video game, of course. But those laws are a little bit more abstract. Like if you look at the clear and present danger law, you can't say fire in a crowded theater. That actually came about trying to stifle speech that was anti-war of World War I. So I actually hate that ruling, and I hate that people defend that all the time.
Yeah.
So I am very into free speech, and I do think it is a little bit tricky with public figures and how much of a right do they have to their depiction. So I think there just needs to be new laws, but I don't think the technology is really the issue, because if the technology just says, hey, this is fake, then essentially that does all that it's going to do, because then we know reality from falsehood, which is the biggest issue here. Or if it has some marker that if you put a filter on, you can instantly tell that it's fake, so that way it's easier to track down, especially for forensic issues, because I can see this becoming a big issue in courtrooms and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take, and I know I rambled a little bit, but I'm getting through this seltzer, buddy.
I got you. Now, do you think something like this? Do you think Taylor Swift is justified in feeling like this has affected her personally, or do you think she feels like she's being harassed with this stuff? Because some of these photos were of all these guys and she's in a very lewd pose, bent over and stuff like that, and there was football playing that we
want to protect a pen, but what if somebody had really sentimental attachment to a pen and it really meant a lot to them? I think they can feel justified with that. Sure. And I don't know her life, I don't know what she's been through, I don't what makes her feel a certain way. So I do think 100% she has a right to be justified, even if I can say that I would be fine. But also I don't have that many eyes on me, I don't have that exposure to really understand what she's actually going through. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be pretty empathetic in that, even if my knee-jerk reaction is kind of it's people talking shit online.
Yep.
I think that we should still be empathetic to that. And I don't know how this wouldn't be harassment. So that's why I said, before, the AI conversation is a little bit of a red herring. I think AI is really interesting to discuss and the ethics of it. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that this has anything to do with AI. I think that people are harassing her by making fake porn videos of her, that's and passing it off as real. It's not it's hey, I'm gonna make all this fake stuff, you know what I mean, just for entertainment, parody purposes or whatever. Then I think that you could argue the free speech thing. But when you're just posting it, and it looks exactly real, and she's been going to these things, and you use literally the same facial expressions from her expressing excitement at the game to be expressing excitement with the players. I mean, yeah, wasn't there that that guy in the woods that was wrestling the alligator over pizza that people were arguing if it was fake or not?
I remember there was a guy that did that with a salmon or something like that. He was fighting over a fish or something like that, and he was doing karate moves and stuff like that. I do remember that. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, is this real? It's so if they're gonna think that's real, this is obvious. So yeah, there needs to be some clear labeling for them to have any claims of free speech. But 100% she has the right to feel justified, even if and I think that's an important thing though for men especially to realize we can kind of look at things and be brush it off, we're masculine, but you're not everybody else. Don't fucking. Do you have 2 billion people fucking looking at you every day? No, shut up.
Exactly.
That's how I feel about it.
No, you're 100% correct though, because she's probably in this generation, she's probably one of the most famous artists, honestly, mm-hmm. and her concerts are always selling out and whatnot. And like I said, I mean, I don't listen to her music. That's not my style, but I've got no issue. She seems just a really genuine and. And I didn't really want to kind of go into the relationship actually, but I think the reason why she and Travis Kelce clicked is because he comes from a good family, and I think she gets a lot of unfair harassment. But yes, it comes with the territory. People are gonna hate on you no matter what. I mean, people hate me all the time, but that just comes with the territory, especially if I'm trying to build a social profile. But there's some things where the things I have an issue with is for one, deepfakes, 2, doxing, 3, attacking families. Those things are off limits as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. But it's society. It's a shitty world we live in. What can I say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we can morally condemn those things, but then be okay, are we going to give people? Because I don't want to stifle art too much. You know what I mean? What if somebody wants to create wants to use do a fictional setting where it's in the real world and like the person runs into Taylor Swift and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There could be context like where I think that we can carve it out for. And like I don't like to equate all types of content. I think like when you talk about like sexual and lewd content, like even though I'm a big believer in like porn, being free and everything, not like free to purchase, but you know what I mean, free speech with porn and everything. I do think that like there is a difference between the type of content that we're talking about, and I think that it very easily crosses into the line of harassment when you're doing it with someone like this. So I don't think it's that hard really to figure out like too many of the layers of it. But I think like morally, like yeah, dude, if you're like creating that stuff, that's a little bit, and like passing it around everywhere, that's pretty low behavior. Even if like we do find a way like to make it legal to depict them, as long as it like says like deep fake 100%, like. I still think like we should condemn that behavior, even if we make it legal, because like we have to protect free speech and we have to protect speech that we don't like. You know what I mean? Yeah. That might be speech that we just don't like, and it's going to be hard to like really see where the lines go in there. It will be interesting to see if she can claim any financial damages over this. You know what I mean? Over like this is affecting my actual perception out there. That would be an issue. I don't really know exactly where I'd come down on that yet, but I don't actually know too much about the Kelce's family, but I did see the vaccine comments that he had, where like they were like trying like to pit him and Aaron Rodgers, and he was like, "Yeah, I get the vaccine, protect my kids and stuff, all that," and like it really just a family guy. And I just want to shift that a little bit into like Biden too. I think Biden gets like a lot of shit for like this, like corrupt like super whatever guy. Like he was known like for so long. It's like the poorest guy in Washington. He like lost his first wife, like and like one of his kids, and like he's been through a lot. And I think that people look at politicians and always think the worst of them, and he really just seems like you can disagree with his policies for whatever reason. That's totally fine. Like you could think that he's supporting a genocide or whatever. I'm not going to critique you for that in this breath. But like, he really does seem like somebody who wants like to do the best for America and like is trying his best. Like he does do what he thinks is fair and right, and you can disagree with him on that, but he really does seem like a stand-up guy. And it connected to the thing we were talking about before, the complete opposite when you have somebody like Trump who is convicted of lying in court. Like to the court after a court case that he was already found guilty of.
I agree. Yeah, I hear you. It's just, because, and I tell you, if you haven't had a chance, you should check out the New Heights podcast. It's the Kelsey brothers. They are hilarious. Like, they are a hoot to watch. They're just so much fun. So, but, all right, go ahead and, why don't you go ahead and give us your last current event. I know this would be a really dicey one.
Yeah, so it was about the Barbie movie, which, did you see it, by the way?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you didn't see it yet. Okay.
You can spoil it for me,
this will be me preaching a little bit. Mm-hmm. Well, no, there's not really much to spoil. It's women good. It's really okay. So I wanted to talk about the Barbie movie because for some reason Ryan Gosling got an Oscar. I believe he won the Oscar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Oscars haven't happened. He's been nominated though.
He's just nominated. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, mm-hmm. But he's like one of the front runners or whatever. They're really like talking about it, and it was for supporting actor and stuff. And it is an interesting conversation, I think, for two reasons. Number one, the only way that you can say that he was the best supporting actor is if you say that all the other supporting actors that were like nominated were just not very good, and all the leading actors on the other side were very good, because Margot Robbie owned that movie. Like that was about her. Like she ran it. Like she was the character, the center. Like you felt every emotion that she was trying to feel. She did a phenomenal performance. Ryan Gosling was there. He was funny, but like the idea that he would be getting nominated after everybody is it really just like the only way you can defend it is if the scales are so off, because she was really that pivotal in that movie and that awesome. However, this was like the worst movie I've ever seen for female empowerment. It was extremely infantilizing, and it made it seem like the only thing that like women have to do is just like have a long speech. Like the end of what they do, okay, is Barbie goes into the real world because she's feeling some distress in her life. And it's because a real world person that's playing with her is feeling that distress. So she goes in to get her happy in the Barbie way. And as soon as she gets in the world, literally nothing happens. She's wearing like these 90s like loud clothes, like you see in the trailer or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like guys are looking at her and she's like, "Oh my God, I feel like there's like something violent or sexual about what's happened." And like nothing has happened. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? And like every single man in the movie is a complete idiot. Apparently we're all obsessed with horses. I've like ridden a horse twice in my life, and I think that they're smelly and they're cool, but like I don't care that much. Like it's cool that give me a fucking car. What are you talking about? It was just like, and so Ken goes into the world with her, and then he finds out about the patriarchy and that like men run shit, and then he comes back before Barbie comes back because she's like still, and then he like makes the patriarchy take over Barbie land, and then Barbie comes back and she does a long speech with the girl that was having issues in the real world. They both go back to Barbie world, and they give long speeches to unbrainwash the girls that accepted the Kens taking over Barbie land. And it's like, if you could just talk everybody out of misogyny, it would be okay. And like, it doesn't really tackle, you know what I mean, like the benefits of the traditional family, why like the role of women as a caretaker and not necessarily a political and economic figure was so attractive to so many people for so long. It doesn't take into account like that the modern era we're dealing with a lot of women, and especially a lot of mothers that have insecurities around having to work, but also want to devote time to their families because they find that as like a higher calling, if you will. And like, like family is just like so important for so many different reasons that so many like there's so many reasons why the traditional family works the way it does and is so popular and why people want to defend it so much. I don't think that's the only way. Obviously, I live an alternative lifestyle, but like this family unit thing is really important, and it's the reason why a lot of misogyny happens because of like the gender roles in the family is really where they get solidified. So like it could have tackled that in so many different ways, but like it's just this girl preaching at you, which is kind of annoying. But that wasn't even Margot Robbie's character. Margot Robbie's character was amazing. So like the fact that he gets a nomination kind of shows that like these problems are actually ever present. Like the problems of like that, like the feminism isn't really where the conservatives think it is. Like for me, and that's okay. There can be some types of media that aren't for me, but the performances like Margot Robbie was definitely way more impressive than Ryan Gosling. And like I'm a little bit of a movie snob, and like it's obvious. Like it's. So Ryan Gosling even came out like, "Hey, I'm happy to be nominated," but like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big rant. Let me know what you think about that.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I there's a reason why I haven't seen it. It just doesn't seem like my kind of movie. Then again, I've watched quite a few movies that didn't seem like my kind of movies, and I'm glad I avoided them because there's some movies out there that I just like is the biggest waste of my time. Now, I'm not saying. I mean, for all I know, I could like the Barbie movie, but it's just like. It just doesn't capture my attention. Now, my wife and my mother-in-law watched it, and they absolutely loved it. They thought it was great. Yeah. And Margot Robbie is a fantastic actress. Apparently, she did. You're not the only person that's ever told me that she did a great job. Apparently, a lot of people are upset that she got snubbed for the Oscar, which I can definitely see that because she is fantastic. She was really good in I, Tonya as well, as Tanya Harding. Yeah. She's a very gifted actress, and the movie did really, really well. Like, it scored really high in the box office. The ratings were fantastic. So people are wondering, why didn't the director get nominated for Best Director, essentially? It's been nominated for Best Picture, so why not Best Director? Well, there's been a few people that also got snubbed, like Denis Villeneuve. He didn't win Best Director when he got nominated for it, which that it is what it is for the movie Dune. Do I think that there's probably like some... patriarchal ideas about this? It's possible, honestly. Like, I feel like sometimes some people get snubbed and some people don't. When I look at movies, like, for example, when Elizabeth Banks did the new Charlie's Angel movie and it tanked, people say they just don't like strong women in strong roles. And I talked about this with my wife the other day. It has to be done right. Sigourney Weaver in Aliens is a great example of a woman that's out there and kicking fucking ass because she is scared out of her mind. She has to go save that little girl who's been kidnapped by aliens. She is scared out of her mind. She is walking through tunnels and there's aliens just getting ready to pop out at her at any moment. She's got a fucking machine gun and she is ready to rock and roll. And by then, when she has the little girl Newt, and she encounters the alien queen, she goes nuclear and just says, "Fuck you, I'm gonna nuke your entire fucking organization here." Like, that is what I call, she's not badass because she's a woman. She's a woman who's a fucking badass. That's the way I look at it. And I just think, like, with certain characters, it has to be done right. You can create a powerful... She's not powerful because she's a woman. She's a woman that is powerful, That's the way I think you could do it. Now, like I said, I could watch the Barbie movie and I could love it. I could say it's the greatest thing ever. But, I just think it has to be done right. And it's easy for me to say that because, for one, I've never done a movie. I've never directed a movie. I'm a movie snob myself. But, like, I look at characters completely different than how some people do. I can watch a movie where you can have a strong female lead and I feel like she does a great job, but the movie sucks. The movie's horrendous, like you just talked about with Barbie, right? Or I could watch a movie where the movie's fantastic, but the lead role is cringy as all get out. It's like, this person, like, why does anybody like this? It really kind of, but every person has a different idea of like what a movie is supposed to look like. And I think it's great that it did so well. I thought the movie was going to tank, honestly, but it did really, really well in theaters. If people felt like they felt empowered by it, great, that's fine. Do I think that, Margot Robbie got snubbed? Well, I didn't watch the movie yet, but my wife said she did a great job. You said she did a great job. Lots of people that seen the movie said she did a great job. I'd say she did get snubbed because she's a talented actress. And I like her because she seems like a genuinely good person too. I mean, we talk about genuinely nice people. She's a genuinely nice person. But I think like my big issue, here's a good example of like pushing something that just didn't seem necessary. Avengers Endgame, right? When Captain Marvel comes down, says, "Hey, Peter Parker, you got something for me?" He's like, "How are you going to get past all that?" And here comes Thanos' army and shit like that. And then all the female Marvel characters like, "Don't worry, she's got help." I'm like, that was done poorly. Like, I feel like that wasn't really necessary. You could have done it a different way. But did you ever watch the series The Boys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
The season 2, right? The end of
all
season
cut
2,
up with The Boys.
Yeah,
Come on.
but season 2, the end of season 2, where all the female characters are kicking the shit out of Stormfront, they say girls do get it done. That's how you fucking do it.
Yeah, that was fucking awesome.
That was awesome. Like, I was laughing hysterically, but I liked it because they kicked the shit out of her. And they did it because she was a pain in the ass. There was no overarching...
And it made sense for everyone to be there.
Exactly. I feel like it was... when directors and when movie studios and other studios try too hard, it comes across as patronizing. It comes across as cringy. But, it really is, like... One person might like this movie, and I'll fucking hate it. It really depends, though. But it just really kind of depends on... It's taster's choice in this regard. I mean, you kind of agree with me there?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, too, because, like... up there. I think that like the movie too, like it was very likable. I actually enjoyed it. I hated the message behind it. Like I really, because it was just like, what the fuck? Like, are you saying with like because it just seemed like they were saying like all you need is a speech and everything will be all right. But like there was like a lot of funniness behind there, and like it doesn't really need to take itself too seriously. Like it's a Barbie movie about a doll that was like literally built off, you know what I mean, like a sexual ideal, you know what I mean. That so like it makes sense that it's gonna have this message too. And like, why are we even taking it so seriously? Because the movie was really funny. So they have in Barbie Land, they have the houses like the real Barbie houses that are open, you know what I mean? They don't have walls, so you can see in and play with them. So they have that, and like when the Kens take over, you have Ryan Gosling's Ken, and he's there, and he goes, and he takes over the house, and he's like, "Yeah, this is my Mojo Dojo Casa house," and like it's fucking hilarious. Like, but then like he's like, "Well, I want to be your girlfriend now," and like he goes behind, he's like then comes back, and like it's so well done. Like it's a very well done movie. I could never like the only thing I didn't like about it was the message, but like I said, not every message has to be for you. Like, and I think that. That's something like a lot of people don't get about it, but the movie was like really well done. And I do think that she was snubbed because she did such a good job. But I think it kind of sucks because I worry that it'll be like the next one that we see, like the next like female director Oscar is going to kind of be like a token prize like to this, kind of the same way that like Leo got an Oscar after what's it called? After Revenant, but everybody thought he should have got it like during Django or like Wolf of Wall Street or any of those movies or anything. And it kind of seems like a consolation prize to him. And I worry that that's like how this is going to be too. I think the Academy is kind of like a weird thing that people care about there. And I think, and I think that like the patriarchy that this like unveiled, like this nomination was like very subtle. You know what I mean? It's like they weren't going to put it like for the highest thing, but like they knew they had to give it something. And so I think that that's like where it's kind of like it's a very subtle patriarchy, which is good. I would rather deal with subtle patriarchy than overt, patriarchy like happens in a lot of other places, where like women can't do these things. Women couldn't direct a movie. But yeah, I do agree that like it has to be done right. I think that like the Marvel movie, the Avengers part, like where all they get together, I think that was good for a shot. But I don't, like you said, like it didn't make sense why everybody was there. It was a little bit cringe. I did kind of like it though, because I was like, it looks cool, whatever. All the girls are together.
It was great, yeah.
There was a part of me that was like, but then the other part was just like, okay, like Marvel, like it was a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, it was still a great movie. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and I think that a better example of like feminine strength done right, like a badass feminine, is Scarlett Johansson's character. Like Black Widow is such an emotional rock for the series, and her sacrifice on Dathomir like made
Oh,
so much sense
yeah.
that she would be the one that would go. Like you, like and it was because she was loved more. And the whole thing about the Soul Stone is that you have to sacrifice someone that you love. So because she was loved for more, and she knew that, she had to be the one that goes.
Yep.
Like that was the only way that could work. And it was like it was done so well. Like you really felt that character like missing from you.
Yep.
It really like took a lot out of you. And I think that like you said, like it just has to be done right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's an issue where like we look at just in a broader point, we look at gender, like all the good things are male, like strong, powerful, you know, stoic, cool, you know, and like what's womanly, like fertile, like motherly, like it gets weird when like there's a lot of value and strength and compassion and like nurturing, not just nurturing, but like providing life. And especially like as a father, like seeing your woman literally provide life, like with her body to another person, like there's a element to that too.
Yeah.
So seeing like Scarlett Johansson kind of nurture the Avengers by, you know, literally giving them like her body, like that was a really badass way to do it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think that like those gender elements are like I'm not like a gender abolitionist at all, but I do think that we need to de-stratify like cool things from men and like girly. Like think if you call something girly, it doesn't sound good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's something that's got to change.
Well, yeah. I mean, the red pill incel culture of like men should always be stoic, men should never show emotions. That's a crock of shit in my personal opinion. Like there is nothing wrong with a man showing emotions, especially to a significant other. Anybody that says you should never cry in front of your woman is full of shit. Because, I mean, I'm sure you can attest this, you know, and I'm not just saying this, you know, because, you know, I love my wife. But the thing is like, whenever I've hit my low point, she's always there for me. Of course, I can be vulnerable for her. Now, obviously, my wife is not going to want me to be, like, melting down every 2 seconds, okay? Like, if every day I'm just bitching and moaning about something and just melting down, yeah, she's going to be turned off by that. But if I'm like stoic, if I'm strong a lot of the time, and I'm having a really bad fucking day, you know, I should be able to go and vent to her, and she should be there for me to comfort me, to help me know let me know it's gonna be okay, because it is gonna be okay, and I should be the one to return the same thing to her, because that's what a couple does. That's what marriage is all about, being there for one another. This whole idea that no, men should be stoic at all times. They should. That's a crock of shit, and like that's why like. You know, if a guy's a little bit more feminine, maybe that's what a woman likes. Maybe she likes a guy that's a little bit more feminine. That doesn't mean he's less of a man. It just means that he has certain character traits that are different. Like, so that's why when people say, I don't think masculinity is necessarily how strong you are. It's your strength of character, essentially. And that's one thing that I feel like a lot of men need to kind of grow up with. They need to realize that they got to stop acting like, oh, no, I need to be a badass all the times. Women don't always want a guy that's like just gonna kick everybody's ass just because they look at you cross, kind of shit. That's not. You want somebody that's like a role model, especially if like, you know, somebody that you can look up to, somebody that you can confide in, things like that. I mean, if that makes sense. I know we're kind of going off topic essentially, but it all kind of ties together, if you ask me.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I mean, your partner should be your partner. Like I saw recently, like a whole bunch of gay people were getting mad that like partner was being co-opted by straight people, and I'm like, what? I was like, I'm engaged right now. Saying fiance like feels like a little bit too fancy all the time, and I don't want to say girlfriend. You know what I mean? And like, I don't like to say wife all the time because then it's like, oh, you're married, and so like, you know, like partner just it makes so much sense, and like that's what you should have.
Yeah.
You should have a partner,
a
through life that
partner.
you want to go through.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like. Yeah, it doesn't matter gender. That's not because that shouldn't be what's important, because you should be balancing each other out. Like whatever your positives are, they should help for her weaknesses and vice versa. If both of your weaknesses are bringing you down, then you're in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. Yeah, and I think that this kind of alludes to like what you're talking about, like the power and stuff like that you like exert and like your stoicness and everything. I think that like Jordan Peterson actually, before he went a little bit crazy after his benzo thing, he had a really good he has a really good idea that he talks about where like if it isn't impressive if you don't. I'm just gonna like use an extreme example. It's not impressive if you don't hit a woman, if you don't like even have the capacity to harm a woman. You know what I mean? Like you have to have the power to do something for your restraint, like to be respected and stuff. So like if you cannot employ violence, like then like there isn't any like restraint there. And like obviously like you shouldn't hit a woman for any reason or anything.
Sure.
But like it's but like if like you having strength, like just to be like physically strong, that like if you just let that out, you're just like a monster. You're just like a raged beast or whatever. You know what I mean? Sure. And if you don't have any of it, then you're just a weakling that's just sitting there doing nothing. But like you have to like have, like you said, that strength of character to be able to know when to deploy it, when it's an appropriate, you know what I mean? When am I defending somebody versus when am I aggressing somebody like an asshole? Yeah. And I think that like that feeling that we all have of like that it's fair if somebody that's aggressed upon, or if it's fair if somebody that's defending them a little bit harder against somebody that's aggressing upon them. I feel like that's like a general idea that we have. So you always want to have that capacity, like to do more harm back, but restrain yourself. And I think that kind of bleeds in all situations that we've had too. Just about like how that kind of like is our modus operandi, like for, you know, how we get along as humans. Like it's basically like, all right, let's try to do this thing as fair as we can. And that's like why I like my idea of liberal imperialism, because it lets a movie come out like Barbie that I would have no like possibility of wanting, like if I had command economy and try to control everything, or if I was dictator and decided like what thing was degenerate or not degenerate, blah blah blah. Like there's so many other places that couldn't make that, and the fact that they did is like awesome. And another good example of this, just to finish my rant here, is Kung Fu Panda. I can't remember who said this, but China has Kung Fu, China has pandas, but China can never make Kung Fu Panda. Like that is such an American thing. And I think America is fucking badass because we can do all this type of shit. Yeah. You know, we can do that, and we can do fucking Top Gun. We can Maverick blowing up the enemy. We don't even need to know who it is. We just know that we're blowing shit up. Like, yeah. So yeah, like that's liberal imperialism all the way, man. Let's get the freaking stars and stripes across the whole globe.
I'm sure there's people saying like, what did this guy just give? But yeah, it is what it is. So
I'm preaching. I'm a prophet for liberal imperialism.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. So hey, actually, before we get to close up, because we're hitting about 90 minutes right here, is there anything you want to kind of like close out with, or you know, anything else you want to discuss?
This was definitely a lot of fun. These are we talked about this a little bit before. Like the reason why I do all these conversations isn't because I really think that like my ideas are gonna like catch on and take over the world.
Sure.
I think that part of me, like, and I'm sure a lot of people think like this and it sounds pretentious, but part of me does feel like I'm misplaced in time. Like I think that like my ideas will come about like in 300, 400 years, like when the economy globalizes so much more that like the idea of just like a worldwide, one world, like liberal government will just make sense to everybody.
Sure.
Like NATO expanding will be like the least of our worries, because like we're gonna have to worry about like our moon colonies and stuff like that and whatever. Hopefully, either that or we, you know, die on this planet, which it's like the one thing I don't want to do. Yeah. So like I really do just I do these conversations like hopefully I leave something behind, like that's why we record them and share them with people. Sure. Hopefully some people get something out of them, but I really do get a deep satisfaction like discussing these things and being open to bounce ideas off. And I could be wrong about anything. I could change a lot of ideas. Remember, everybody, I just vote. I'm not a policymaker, so I can't order you know, Israel to annex everything. And if I was in a position to order that, I would probably have so much more information that I would be making different calculuses on what I think is appropriate. So take everything I said with a grain of salt, but also, you know, take a shot and enjoy nights like this with good people like Alex. That's what I got to say.
Well, I do appreciate that, my dude. You got any plugs or any social media accounts where they can find you at?
I did. FlausnyGG is pretty much everything. Good game everywhere. If you want to find me playing in Master Duel, I play Master Duel Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot. If you want to find me on Discord to debate, if you want to find me on Twitch, I am trying to get back into that now that the baby's getting a little bit older. Then also I'm on Twitter talking shit all the time. I might get banned again. Who knows? Apparently, you're not supposed to make your mom jokes on Twitter, because I got banned once for telling somebody that their mom should have aborted them, and then I got a ding the other day. Yeah, and I got a ding the other day because, like, I said that somebody was like, they said like they brought up their mom, so I was like, oh, and I fucked your mom. It was actually about AAR, and I was like, I fucked your mom, and then I came at her back and we made art with that. That may have been a little bit much, but I don't think it's against TOS. I don't know. So I try to. I'm a little bit rude. I'm a little bit crude, but not around the family.
Yeah. I mean, let's just say X is a little inconsistent, because like I got banned for something that I didn't even think was that bad, but I've had people like literally tell me like horrendous things, and I'm the one that gets timed out. But you know, whatever. Yeah. So
I don't ever know their rules. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But that's why I like just a free and open conversation where like we're not limiting ourselves. I do worry. Just one last thing, just a little thing I thought of. If you got a little bit of time, I don't want to keep you longer. But one of the things about AI that I worry about is as we start to interact with AIs more, like, because I think that within the next 5-10 years, we're going to start using them like in apps. We're going to start using them instead of like just having like your phone, like it's going to actually talk back to you and stuff like that. And I worry that that's going to like sanitize and sterilize a lot of conversation and not allow like crude stuff, not allow sexualized stuff. And I worry how kids growing up with those types of things. So this is, you know, probably a couple decades in the making, but I worry like how they are going to adjust like to a world that kind of like strips these things away or like has them as like not common parlance. Like, you know what I mean? Like the weird uncle making an inappropriate joke or something like that. Like, I wonder how much of that character is like going to be sterilized and like sanitized, and it scares me a little bit, to be honest. A lot of people are like, "Oh no, it's too much like porn, like to kids." But it's like, I think kids have been seeing people have sex forever. I don't really think that's the, end of the world. Like parents deal with that, but like I think that like the sanitization and like people growing up with that, that's a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like parents at the end of the day, they need to have the conversation with their children like soon, because the thing is I look at it like this. Just before I close up, like in 2019, I attended a human trafficking rally, and there was a trafficking victim. She was a survivor, and her name's Gabby Humphreys, and she said like parents need to have these conversations with their children as soon as possible, like the sex conversation as soon as possible, because the average age that a child has a cell phone is 11. And that's when they get subjected to pornography. And it's really hard for parents to maintain and monitor what their kids do all the time, which is why it's so important for them to have these conversations. Now, we can all agree that children should not be viewing this stuff, right? Now, parents need to be having these conversations, because she said, it's like, I pulled both of my sons in and said, listen, this is fantasy, okay? What you're seeing right here on this phone screen is not reality. Men do not treat women like this. Women are not basically for you to do this to. And that's really, really, really important, because children are so impressionable essentially, and that's why the stuff is always going to be there, like porn, violence and things like that. It's always going to be on the internet.
I worry about the violence a little bit more, to be honest.
But like
especially on Twitter recently, if you've noticed that.
It's gotten really hectic, but that's why the parents need to be all the more important for them to be really regulating what their children are consuming nowadays. Like that's more important than anything else, because I'm a firm believer that porn should be viewed and stuff like that, but it's just monitor what your kids are looking at, and if you catch them you have that talk with them, say, do not be on these websites, okay? That's not for you to watch. This is like when you're 18 years old, you can watch whatever the hell you want to and stuff like that, but it's just like children should not be subjected to it. But that's something all of us can agree upon. But that's just our point of view. So
and also I do think that like if like a kid sees it, like it's not going to be the end of like the world 99% of the time. Like if you're there, if you're monitoring, if you're if they like know like it's, hey, this is like not like you're not like at this age yet where this is appropriate, like. And if you can't have that conversation, you're not a good parent. I'm sorry. Like I hate when people are like, oh my God, how would I describe gay people? It's like, what?
That's your job. That is your job.
Yeah, like that's like the easiest thing. Like why? Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many harder things. Like my kids are teenagers now, my older ones, and like we've talked about like Israel, Palestine and stuff, and I steel man a lot. So like I obviously I'm very pro-Israel, but like I steel man a lot of like, hey, Palestine's doing this because like where are they going to put their military installations? Like they have to put them like where civilians are, because they don't actually have an option to put them anywhere else. And like you're going to say that they just have to accept like their land being taken from them because like what, these people came in like 70 years ago and we're just supposed to be okay with it? Like no, they're going to be fighting back that. And like, oh, you're going to use human shields? Well, what do you want us to do when there's nowhere else to go? Like we have to bomb from these places. So we're doing, again, that intoxication revolution. I am doing something righteous. So yeah, it all bleeds together. I don't know how you even got talking about Israel Palestine again, but it all bleeds together.
It's all good.
But that's a much harder conversation than hey, this is fantasy. You know how you see war movies, how you see war games, not the same, the same. So gotcha. And that violence on Twitter is really like there's bad stuff on there. I don't know how, like I'm okay with like speech and stuff, but like words and stuff, but like if you're like having videos of actual like summary like thing, no, don't. So those don't need to be there. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, well, hey, Flausny, much obliged to you. I'm really thankful for you to spend this hour and a half here with me. Thanks a lot. I do appreciate you, man.
For sure. Anytime you want to talk about anything, hit me up. And anybody who's listening, you hit me up too. I'm always down to argue about why I might be wrong. I could change my mind any day. So just by the way, I did change my mind in Master Duel. I am now Team Ban Maxi. You probably don't know what that means, but it's a card that's impressive. And I used to be for it. Yeah, it's I don't like that card anymore. So I changed my mind on that. So if you want to change my mind on something, hit me up.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you, man. You have yourself a good evening now.
You too, brother. Bye.
Later.